My name is Dr. Lewis Woods, and I teach several classes at Middle Tennessee State University. The two survey classes I teach are African American history since 1865 and United States history since 1865. What I try to do in these survey classes primarily to showcase my love of history and also to show students how history is relevant in their day-to-day lives. I try to make relevance or try to get students to really appreciate and understand how a historical event has contemporary relevance and importance. So I go back and forth between the current and also the historical to try to underscore this point. The two upper division classes I teach are African American social and intellectual history. In this class, I try to get students to appreciate that the fact that typically important historical figures are reduced to a soundbite, or their careers are reduced to a soundbite. And so I want them to get a more representative example of how these leaders' philosophies changed and evolved over time, et cetera. One example is typically when we think about Dr. King, we think about him only with the I Have a Dream speech and really about two sentences from that speech, the content of character that's so famously repeated in February. So my goal really is to get them to understand that, for using the King example, that his philosophy changed over time, and that the King that we learn about in 1963 looks very different than the King we know about in 67 and 68 when he gets more radical. The other upper division class I teach is Urban Crisis. And the goal in this class is really to show how the modern ghetto was created. And we talk about racial zoning, restrictive covenants, redlining, and other discriminatory practices that really made people within these urban centers stuck within an urban colony or within a city colony. And so I really try to get people to understand and appreciate that the modern housing situation that we see today was not happenstance. There were federal policies, real estate policies, and actions by individual residents that really crystallized neighborhoods and crystallized urban centers. I also teach a graduate seminar entitled Readings of Modern American History. And in that class, my goal is really to help master's students to prepare for their comprehensive exams. And we really cover about a decade a week. We go from the Progressive Era all the way through to the rise of the New Right in the 1980s. And how I plan to expose my students to multiple books, I want to get them to read about or be exposed to about 10 a week, is that each student will write on a different book, and then they will exchange their book reviews. And so as we go around from one week to the next, we'll have one leader kind of showcase or lead the discussion, but then everybody's reading a different book and reporting on that book and then sharing those reports. And so depending on how large the classes are, we should be able to get 5 to 10 minimum books or assignments per class. And so when it comes time to prepare for one's comprehensive exams, hopefully they'll have a pretty solid foundation in terms of being prepared. And so those are basically the classes that I teach at MTSU.